The 1st Azov Corps of the National Guard has taken up defensive positions in the Pokrovsk sector in order to block attacking Russian forces, the unit reported. Pokrovsk, a frontline town in Donetsk Oblast, has for months been one of the most heavily contested battlegrounds of Russia's offensive in eastern Ukraine. Azov said its forces arrived in the area several days ago. The unit described the situation along the Pokrovsk axis as complex and dynamic, with Russian troops attempting to advance while reportedly suffering losses in both personnel and equipment. Azov units have already implemented measures to block Russian forces in the area, and the results will be reported later, the statement read. The news comes as Russian forces made a push toward the Dobropillia Kramatorsk highway in Donetsk Oblast, reportedly piercing Ukrainian defenses and seizing positions in nearby settlements to support further offensive operations. Dobropillia lies 94 kilometers northwest of Russian-occupied Donetsk and about 22 kilometers north of embattled Pokrovsk. Ukrainian brigades, severely under strength in infantry, are battling to hold the line against Russian advances in Donetsk Oblast, even as Russian forces have seemingly learned to target weak points in the Ukrainian defense. Civilian evacuations from contested or occupied areas remain extremely dangerous, with Russian forces repeatedly accused of targeting non-combatants. The 1st Azov Corps was formed earlier this year as part of a broader reform toward a new corps system. The unit takes its name from the Azov Brigade, a unit that traces its roots to the start of Russian aggression in 2014 and whose fighters took part in some of the heaviest battles of the war, including the Russian siege of Mariupol in 2022. The commander of the battalion of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade Magura, Alexander Shirshin, called for right decisions to be made to stabilize the front line in the Pokrovsk sector. While we continue to advance, storming the crucial ruins of houses, concentrating capable forces in the Sumy direction, we have a difficult situation in the Pokrovsk direction. It is very similar to the events during the surrender of Ocheretine, which created chaos, a critical situation in the area, and subsequently ensured the enemy's success in the occupation. It is important to make the right decisions now, even if they entail undesirable consequences, but will preserve our capabilities and allow us to stabilize the front, he said. Earlier, it was reported that the Russian invaders were advancing in the area of Kucherevyi Yar, Zoloty Kolodiaz, and Maisk. The St. Petersburg Garrison Military Court sentenced the former head of the Armored Service of the Central Military District, Major General Denis Cutilov, to 8.5 years in prison. He was found guilty of accepting a bribe on an especially large scale while fulfilling a state defense order. Part 6, Article 290 of the Criminal Code, the Investigative Committee reports. The 46-year-old serviceman will serve his sentence in a maximum security penal colony. He was stripped of his rank. The court also banned him from holding administrative positions in government agencies for 6 years after his release. According to the investigation, in 2023 to 2024, the Ministry of Defense concluded a number of contracts worth over 140 million rubles for the repair and maintenance of military equipment with individual entrepreneur Chudinov. Putilov supervised their execution. However, it was established that the general received a bribe of 1 million rubles from the entrepreneur for general patronage. As a result, the terms of the contract were not fulfilled. Thus, Putilov caused significant damage to the state. The military man's defense decided to appeal the verdict in the First Western District Military Court. Cutilov's arrest became known in September 2024, about 4 months after Russian President Vladimir Putin awarded him the rank of Major General. He became at least the 8th high-ranking officer to be purged after the resignation of Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. Prior to that, 2 of the latter's former deputies were arrested. Army generals Dmitry Bulgakov, damages of 1.3 billion rubles, and Pavel Popov, embezzlement at construction sites in Patriot Park, as well as the head of the Main Personnel Directorate of the Defense Ministry, Lieutenant General Yuri Kuznetsov, bribe of 80 million rubles. In addition to them, Deputy Commander of the Leningrad Military District for Logistics, Major General Valery Muminzanov, and Deputy Chief of the General Staff, Lieutenant General Vadim Shamarin, who were arrested on charges of accepting bribes. In April 2025, the latter was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Pavel Popov's accomplice, former deputy head of the main Directorate for Innovative Development of the Ministry of Defense, Major General Vladimir Shesterov, was also sentenced to 6 years in prison. In addition, the former commander of the 58th Army, Major General Ivan Popov, was sentenced to 5 years, accused of stealing rolled metal purchased for the construction of fortifications in the direction of Zaporizhia. The Azerbaijani authorities are ready for a decisive response following Russian attacks on Azerbaijani gas and oil facilities in Ukraine. As Caliber media outlet reports, with reference to its sources, Baku intends to consider the possibility of lifting the embargo on arms supplies to Ukraine if the Russian Federation continues to strike Azerbaijani infrastructure. The article focuses on the fact that the Russian army is deliberately striking at Azerbaijani energy facilities on Ukrainian territory, which is forcing official Baku to prepare retaliatory measures. All this will inevitably lead to a further deepening of the crisis in bilateral relations, the publication notes. On the night of August the 8th, Russian UAVs attacked a Sochar oil depot in Odessa region. 5 drones caused a major fire and damaged a diesel pipeline. 4 employees of the enterprise were injured. This is the second such attack in recent weeks. Earlier, the troops of the aggressor country struck a gas distribution station near Orlovka, a key hub of the Trans-Balkan gas pipeline through which Azerbaijani gas has been supplied to Ukraine since the end of June. Azerbaijani leader Ilham Aliyev spoke on the phone with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky and commented for the first time on Russian attacks on Azerbaijani oil infrastructure in Ukraine. In a report on the results of the conversation published on the website of the President of Azerbaijan, the Russian attacks on the Sochar oil depot and other Azerbaijani facilities in Ukraine were called targeted. The Azerbaijani side notes that these attacks by Russia will under no circumstances stop Baku's cooperation with Kiev in the energy sector. In turn, the Ukrainian president reported on his Telegram channel that he informed his Azerbaijani counterpart about the aggressor country's attacks on Azerbaijani facilities. Kiev considers these strikes a deliberate attempt by the Kremlin to block the routes that guarantee energy independence for European countries. In addition, the Ukrainian leader informed the president of Azerbaijan about Kyiv's contacts with partners aimed at a real end to the Russian war against Ukraine. The head of state also congratulated the Azerbaijani side on the conclusion of a historic peace agreement with Armenia, which was reached through the mediation of US President Donald Trump.